main event today is Alberta Rose Williams, who'll be talking about her creative practice. Alberta Rose was born and raised in Treaty 7 territory near near Calgary, Alberta, near the Bearspaw, Chiniki and Wesley lands of the Nakoda Nation. She finds passion in art, food, politics, and social issues. These are interests that she expresses through a variety of medium, as well as engagement with different community organizations and events. As an, you might have to correct me, Inuvialuit person growing up outside of her traditional territory, she's often felt a sense of displacement, but found a connection to her culture through her late mother and traditional practices. Alberta graduated from the AU Arts in the spring of 2016 with a bachelor's degree in fine art with distinction, majoring in painting. Then she spent 18 months at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity as a prepatorial practicum at the Walter Phillips Gallery, and that must have been a fantastic experience. Currently, she is based in Calgary or close to Calgary and is the Southern liaison for the Inuit Art Foundation. She's also a studio assistant and an artist and an extremely busy creative person. It's a great pleasure actually to welcome you back, Alberta Rose, because you were a visitor here just a few years ago. She helped out with an Indigenous art panel that we put together around the time Paul Cisaquas's photographic exhibition. So it is a great pleasure to welcome you back.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. Uvlumi, good afternoon. I hope that you're all doing all right today. To start our talk in a good way, I would like to begin by thanking you all for having me here and being here. I know that many of us must be pretty fatigued by having to continue together virtually rather than in person. My names are Ingnik, which is my Inuvialuit name, and Alberta Rose Williams, as you know, is my English name, though I often use Alberta Rose W as a part of my moniker, along with Ingnik, as a means to pay homage to my own duality. I'm of mixed Inuvialuit and British ancestry, and like Michelle said, I was raised in Southern Alberta and received my degree from AU Arts in 2016. I am an interdisciplinary artist, interested in utilizing a variety of mediums in my art practice. I am neurodivergent, so it isn't easy for me to be consistent in my creation methodologies, a tendency that was discouraged by one or two of my former instructors, but it still works best for me anyways, which is probably the best thing for one to do if they hope to remain invested, interested, and genuine with whichever path they decide to follow. So I'm just going to begin by talking a bit about my time at college at AU Arts, formerly ACAD, starting with this work that you see on the screen, which is called North American Dreamcatcher. It was made out of plastic bags and other found materials. It was a work exploring the notion of appropriation and consumerism in Western society coming from an Indigenous background. It was observed by me that many of those who are non-Indigenous tend to see those who are as a largely homogenous group of people. And as such, I had appropriated iconography, the Dreamcatcher, that originated from the Ojibwe people to my own Inuvialuit heritage. Through this appropriation, the acceptance of this action was questioned because of my lineage, and the byproducts of consumerism were addressed through the use of these found objects. They were mostly found plastic grocery bags and some construction markers suggestive of our ever-expanding encroachment on the land through building and pollution. And while I was making it, I was also thinking about food harvesting traditions and how, traditionally Indigenous people, we would use every part of our whatever we obtained for food, would use every part of it, and just kind of using that methodology in contemporary practice by using even the bag that the food came in. This work is called Mother-Daughter. I made it while I was in third year of college. And I was interested in exploring the subject of intergenerational cultural identity. I looked at the relationship between my mother and myself and how tradition and culture played a role in our lives. Although some of the traits and traditions had been passed on, there was still, I felt, a rather large disconnect that was present due to circumstances such as our location, and therefore detachment from that part of my family and Indigenous peers and family. She grew up in the north. She went to residential school, and I was raised in southern Alberta, as you know, and attended public school. So just that kind of disparity in experiences. So the ongoing assimilation of our people erases cultural practices and traditions and replaces them with replicas, and people struggling with their identity. Another member of her community made the traditional moccasins that my mother wore in this photo, whereas the ones on my feet were an appropriated commodified object created by a company owned by non-Indigenous people who are profiting off of our fetishized Indigenous objects. And as our elders pass on, more and more of our traditional ways and languages go with them, and that is why we fight to keep them alive and fight the appropriation of them by outsiders. And so this photo was actually taken 3 weeks before my mother passed away unexpectedly. And then this work I created the next year of college after she had passed away. It is called Sorry Doesn't Cut It, and was a response to what I feel was a disingenuous apology from former Prime Minister Stephen Harper regarding residential schools. My mother, as I said, was a residential school survivor and carried the trauma of her youth throughout the rest of her life. She was a strong and resilient woman, so I painted her portrait over top of the apology and beaded a flower over top of Stephen Harper's signature at the bottom, effectively erasing it. It has 5 petals which reference the 5 children that she raised. This work is called Beating, Genocide, and Appropriation, and it was relating to feelings about cultural appropriation. It reflected my observations about the debasement of First Nations iconography taken by others for the purpose of capital gain, and the historical persecution and oppression faced by Indigenous people for practicing our own traditions and cultures. Remembering the abuse faced by those in residential schools for speaking our native tongues, this work is a visual dialogue about the loss of languages and identity that was a result of this persecution. I utilized beadwork, a traditional form of Indigenous art making, as a way of talking about the genocide of the first peoples of Turtle Island. And I see this method of creating as a link to those lost ancestral roots through the assimilation of myself and family. And then the box is there as a representation of the appropriation, as it's made by a non-Indigenous company that is profiting off of our traditional craft methods. So this image is a still from an installation that I made for an exhibition called Geeks, which was curated by Tamara Lee Cardinal at the St. Mary's University in 2018. So this is now moving on to my postgraduate work. So for this installation, I had the opportunity to delve into a little more into some of the things that I had been recently contemplating in terms of environmental sustainability, our collective disconnect from nature, and our desire to bridge that disconnection. I wanted to draw a parallel between the natural and man-made structures of populated areas versus nature, quote unquote. I had collaged these images and videos together in a way to ask why are man-made structures and societies seen as separate from nature, when in reality everything we have and are comes from it. In Western society, Indigenous knowledge and worldviews have largely been overlooked. We are seen to be so much a part of nature that we were labeled as part of the flora and fauna. And so this is another still. The work is called Things in Nature Which Look Alike Grow to Be Alike. And I'll just play a brief portion of the video. So that is just a small portion of the video. It's a video and photo collage with sound, and it was played on a screen, but there were also projections of stills onto. They had this switch screen that was visible on the other side of the gallery that the images were projected onto. And these are images from an exhibition called Current Terrain. The paintings were actually created as my grad work from AU Arts. They are portraits of my family members on canvas stretched in the form of Inuit drums, and are comprised of paint and beadwork with forms passing through them derived from the abstractification, if I can use that, I don't know if that word exists, but abstractification of sound waves from songs that each person who is depicted on each drum loves, or it reminds me of them. Through the form and materials, I wanted to celebrate my family, ancestral lineages, and the end of my educational journey at ACAD, or AU Arts. These images were taken by Selena Whittaker, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, for the exhibition Current Terrain at Bearspaw Gallery in Toronto in 2018. It was curated by Erin Sutherland, as you can see at the top there, of Inuit Art Collective, of which I'm now a member. And it featured 6 Indigenous artists from Alberta during the yearly Imagine Native Festival. So these are just some more images of it. The one on the left is a self-portrait. It's of me. And then the one on the right is a portrait of my father. And this is the other work that I had in the exhibition. It is called Reclaimed reclaimed landscape, and I created it while I was doing my practicum at the Banff Centre. And I think Michelle had mentioned at the beginning, which read my bio, that I'm interested in using repurposed materials in my art practice. So this is one example of that. It features an image of mountains and a glacier with a cut-up poem overlaid that reads, "The cold drama of which we're all bound, the conquest of the Canadian landscape, and the timeless human presence." These explorers came with hunger, greed, obsession, and a problematic, uncertain legacy. We are still trying to resist. The poem was created by cutting apart an old didactic from the gallery that was saved and subsequently gifted to me by my friend and co-practicum. The location of the image is a destination visited upon by thousands of people each year as a fetishized, commoditized space, a space that Indigenous people were historically pushed out of and now reclaimed, in a sense, through the projection of an Indigenous voice back onto the deteriorating landscape through the use of the poem. But yeah, many of the materials for this painting, the canvas, the frame, the vinyl letters, and I think even some of the paint were all repurposed or recycled or rescued from somewhere. So I think I was just really interested in creating a work that just looks like a regular kind of artwork, but it's secretly made out of all these like rescued materials. And so this is just a closer shot of it. So this is an image from the Ghost Days residency that I participated in at the Banff Centre in 2019. So it was like a year after I left my practicum. And this image is the result of guided activities that we were doing as a part of the residency. It is a photograph that is printed on handmade paper that is infused with sage and sweetgrass, with a photo that was developed in a homemade solution called caffeinol. It's like a citrus and caffeinol solution, just like household items, basically. The image was taken at Bankhead, which is a ghost town outside of the Banff town site. Just what I thought kind of suited the theme of the residency. And during the developing process of these photos, we played an audio piece that we had created all together in a long 25-minute session experimenting with sound. And this is just a group shot of that. I apologize, it seems like it's a pretty low quality image. But those are all the photos from all the participants hanging up on the wall. And then this is I'll just show a very short section of this as well. It's a video that I created of the process with the sound that we made together. So this is a developing process with our experimental audio piece. that this video is on my website if you want to see the whole thing, as are the other videos. It's quite lengthy. It's 28 minutes long. So I guess it wasn't 25 minutes. It was 28 minutes. Our audio piece. Okay. Jump the gun. So this is a work called Hanging Whale Pieces. It was created during that same residency at Ghost Days. It is an installation that I made during the residency. It is comprised of 3 digitally altered photos hanging from a rack of found or repurposed wood. The photographs were my mother's from her life before moving south and having a family with my father. The original images had writing on the back indicating that the first 2 showed her dad and stepmother cutting up the whale, and the third one simply said hanging whale pieces. I had digitally erased the forms of her parents as the whale, and the whale as a means to express my feelings of loss and disconnect from that aspect of my culture and family. I never knew her parents or had the experiences of harvesting from the land in the way that she did. The images are hung on the structure, which mimics the structure that the whale pieces hang on in the third photograph. It sort of denotes the way that art sustains me in my life, the way that the whale sustained them during theirs. Excuse me. The erasure is also referencing a sense of loss that I feel having lost my mother several years ago, and also the chance to be able to ask her about them or to learn more from her, and the chance to hear what her memories were in relation to those experiences. And so this is just a close-up photo of the image. This is the third image. I'll go. So this is the first image of the series, and so it was her father and mother cutting up the whale in the water, and then them again. And then this is the third one with all of the hanging whale pieces erased from the structure or the image. So these are images now from Memory Keepers 2, which took place in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. It was curated by Glam Collective, which is, as you can see, Dr. Heather Igliarte, Dr. Julie Nagum, and Dr. Carla Taunton. We created these works in Halifax at ACAD University for the week before the event took place. It was several Indigenous artists and myself. So it was Sebastian Albin, Coco Monet, Carrie Allison, Jerry Evans, and Sema Egares. And so we collaborated and created our works to all kind of fit together in this outside space in Charlottetown for this art event they have every year. And so these images that you see on the screen are of one of my installation pieces. It is the theme around our part of the exhibition was water. It's what we decided to kind of do together. And so this is a chandelier that is made from a garden hose. At the top, you can see it's coiled up, and then there are laser cut droplets hanging from it. And so the purpose of this work was really just me thinking about my own privilege and the collective privilege of average Canadians in having access to clean drinking water, and just the fact that I was even drinking. I know you're not supposed to now, but like I grew up drinking water in the garden hose, and just like the hidden privilege that that we have in having that access to clean drinking water when a lot of Indigenous communities do not have that yet. And so this is a still from the other part of my installation, which is on the outside of the structure that we built. And it is a loop, a looping animation. I can show it. I'm just gonna change screens. Okay. So this short loop animation was created in talking about the amount of microplastics that are now being found in water. And it's sort of meant to mimic the kind of form of a GIF. Okay, and I'll just go back to the presentation. Okay. Okay, so this is a still from another video and photo collage that I created for, I'm going to try to say this, but I probably won't pronounce it right. I apologize for that. It's called Taskach Pipan Gona Ga Nipa Muskoyesa Nipin Pisameti Pimachi Hiwu, which translates to like the winter snow kills the grass, the summer sun revives it, curated by Missy LeBlanc at Truck Gallery in Calgary. So in this video, I was in Green Park, the Arc de Triomphe du Carrousel in Paris. The Green Park is in London and in front of Buckingham Palace, which is what the still is from. So during this video, I occupy space and speak my mother tongue. And after a century of colonization and genocide, we still stand. French and English are the official languages of Canada, though Indigenous folks know that the real official languages have been spoken here since time immemorial. And so during the act of speaking throughout the video, each time I speak a word, more pieces of the photograph appears on the screen. The photographs all have my mother in them when she was a child. This one, I don't know if you can see the mouse. This is her, and this is a photo of her in residential school. And then this is a photo of her with her family. And from this, I will also play a brief bit. Can I get bit? Ini chefnya. Can I get bit? Islami. Anak kau ni kau tekbir. Kuliah semua. Okay, so this was also a part of that same exhibition. Excuse me. It's a photograph from the performance that I did at Truck. And during the performance, I was writing on the gallery walls with charcoal and a regular pencil. I was using the charcoal in my left hand, or my dominant hand. I'm left-handed. And I reached up as high as I could and wrote the Inuvialuit words. And then with my right hand, which I'm not right-handed. I guess I'm ambidextrous because it's a right-handed world, but I wrote at a lower, more easily accessible part of the wall, the translation of the word in English. And it was a representation of the struggle that many Indigenous folks are going through to learn their traditional languages and the ease of writing in English in a colonized society. Throughout the performance, I would have to walk through the crowd at times to obtain another piece of charcoal or to burn the actual stick to make it. And then this is a photo of the pencil and the charcoal on the wall. And they were resting in one of my mother's, her old antique tobacco tin. So this is a piece that was created for Planetary at Contemporary Calgary in 2019-2020. It's called In the Space of Mokinsis. It's a beaded medallion installed above the mosaic that was created by Helene Hidala in 1979 when the building was still the planetarium. And it hangs in place of where the pendulum used to be when it was open. And it is hung centered approximately above where Calgary would be on the map. And acts as a sort of like mini mosaic, I feel, considering the view not looking outwards towards space, but back inwards at ourselves, because the exhibition was called Planetary, so it was very like thematic of, I think, space. And so on the back, there are just these little beaded section or dots that kind of represent where some of the towns are in Alberta. And so they kind of look like, I feel like, constellations when looking from far away. And this is an image of the installation view. And so you can see it's quite small compared to the size of the mosaic. And then this is my most recent work from during the pandemic. These are a few of the portraits that I painted during my residency at the Central Library, the Calgary Public Library. And for this project, I was and am painting portraits of people who've passed away from COVID-19 onto masks. The purpose of this project is to honor their memories collectively, while also reminding folks of the reality and importance of maintaining health and safety protocols to protect others and to get vaccinated. The man in the center was my uncle. His name was Willie Salamio, and he passed away in 2020 from COVID-19. And then the man to the left of him, here, that's William Noskai. I don't know if I said that right, I'm sorry. He was the Mosum, or grandfather, to the man. He was the father of the man on the far right. So this is his son. And these images were sent by his son, Jared. So this is Jared's dad and granddad who passed away from COVID-19. He also sent some words about them, which I'm just going to read. He said that they were both hardworking men. My Muslim and Kukum had about 12 kids. They have 1 million grandkids and great-grandkids. My Kukum was diagnosed with Alzheimer's about a little over a decade ago and passed last year. My Muslim loved her until the very end. Even though her memory was gone, it was cute. My dad had 6 kids altogether and was a welder for the last 30 years. Altogether, he had 26 grandkids and loved them all very much. He loved to play guitar and sing in church. Both my Muslim and dad ministered a lot. Muslim was 91 and dad was 65. They both got diagnosed with COVID-19 in January and passed on the same weekend in February. My Muslim passed on a Friday night and my dad passed away on Monday, February 11th. This is an ongoing project, as there are many people who reached out to me during my residency that wanted their loved ones included, but I didn't have the time to include them yet. So that's something I'm still working on. As I mentioned, I am also a member of Otitsuwan, Indigenous Art Collective, which is based in Edmonton, Alberta. And I currently have an exhibition up that I co-curated with Erin Sutherland, who actually teaches at the U of C. You can see it by appointment from now until December. And I think that's it.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Alberta. And gosh, I'm dying to visit Osawan in Edmonton. And I've been saying for 2 years that I'm going to get to Edmonton. The incentive is there. It'd be nice to get there before December. And indeed, Erin Sutherland is a wonderful addition to the faculty in the Department of Art. We're so excited that she's on campus and looking forward to some great things from her. Your work is amazing, and I honestly did not know how diverse your practice was, and how don't take this the wrong way, but how competent you are shifting in scale and between different medium and somehow bringing them all together. It's really exciting to see. But I'm not going to chat too much here. I would love to see some questions from our participants. If anybody has a question for Alberta Rose, this is the moment. You're welcome to type it in. There are some kudos coming in. Saw the work at St. Mary's University. Excellent piece. And from Raina, thank you so much. Amazing to see your work. So maybe while people are thinking about that, I can ask you, what's next? Or are you just catching your breath after the exhibition?
I do a lot of, as you can see, I do a lot of things. I'm neurodivergent, so I think that's why I am all over the map. And I think, like I said, the instructors in school really tried to get me to make work that was all similar. And I really struggle with that. And so I just decided to embrace it instead of trying to fight it. And so that kind of branches out to all aspects of my life. As I mentioned, I'm a member of Otitsuwan, and so co-curating this exhibition with Erin, and then also working on one next year for Glenn Gear, who's another Inuit artist, who I love him. And then I'll also be working on co-curating an exhibition in Okotoks, so it'll be a lot closer to home, with Bruno Canadian, who's been a friend of mine for over 20 years and is just another incredible Dene artist who I've always looked up to. And so I'm really excited to work with him on curating this. It'll be an exhibition featuring all Indigenous artists as well. And so that's sort of what I have going on in the near future. The exhibition, that Missy LeBlanc curated for Truck, is traveling around Canada right now. So it's because of the pandemic, that kind of has affected it in a lot of ways. So I'm not sure if it's up right now. It was supposed to be up in Halifax right now, and then Saskatoon and Oshawa. So
the pandemic has just complicated exhibition schedules so much.
yeah.
It's really complicated.
Yeah.
How has, I'm still waiting for those questions, folks. How has this shift been from being, I think, primarily a maker to someone who's curating other people's work?
Well, I think it was on one of my slides, but I didn't talk about it at all. But when I was in college, I co-curated exhibitions with the Indigenous Club.
Okay.
And I really do like that aspect of being able to give opportunities to other Indigenous artists. And I also do prepatorial work, which is, as you said, my practicum at the Banff Centre.
Mm-hmm.
So I do that as well. Just kind of on a freelance basis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a different kind of creativity. Yeah, well, it's really exciting to count you as a colleague and someone really exciting to watch. And there are some questions coming in. A question about how do you pick your mediums for any particular project? Are you more inclined towards video, paintings? I'm going to add beadwork, et cetera, et cetera.
My degree was in painting and I love painting, but I always just, the idea is the foundation of any project. And so I really just kind of listen to my intuition, and throughout the process of making things come to life, they change. And maybe it starts as this, but then it changes into that. So it really is just allowing the idea to kind of take control of where the direction is going with the project. And it's just like trying to think of the best way to express that concept is how I guess I choose the medium.
Mm-hmm. Again, your mastery at so many different techniques is really exciting. There's a question from Paul about any places that that, if I'm understanding his question, juxtapose both contemporary Indigenous works with more historical works. And I can think of a couple if you don't have a ready answer.
The first place I think that comes to mind is probably the Glenbow.
Before it was closed.
Before it was closed, yeah.
Closed.
Yeah, because I know they had acquired one of Tamara Cardinal's pieces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that increasingly museums are being called to the fore, and that it's really important that we show, the royal we, that Indigenous people don't belong to the past, but that they are continuing to be here and be vibrant and to be creative and expressive. I know that the Museum of History in Gatineau also includes contemporary works in their galleries. I know that the ROM in Toronto has done the same. I don't know about the RAM, I'm sure they do. It's something that we can't not do anymore. And that's actually can be really interesting, that conversation between the traditional and contemporary pieces. There could be some really interesting juxtapositions. So Paul, I hope that answers your questions. And we have just a couple more minutes. If anybody else would like to take the plunge, this is your moment. And I'll just mention that we do know, Nico Galleries does know the work of Bruno Canadian. And in fact, we were able to purchase a couple of pieces for our collection 2 years ago, I believe, from his exhibition at the little gallery over in the Department of Art. So that's really exciting. And
He lives like a block away from me.
is that right? And his studio
Yeah.
is just off the main drag there.
Yeah, it's like 3 blocks away from me. It's a small town.
It is a small town.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it is interesting to talk about the traditional versus contemporary Indigenous art. I know I felt like there's this sort of expectation for what Inuit art is supposed to look like, which are, parameters that other groups don't have to live within necessarily, and so I'm interested in like also just creating work that is just contemporary and not necessarily traditional. I think it's hard not living in community, and so it feels a little bit like imposter syndrome too if I tried to make work like that.
It's a challenge, and I've told this story to my class before, about an interview I watched with, completely blanked on his name, famous Indigenous performance artist James Luna, at one of the Venice Biennales. And someone asked him the question about, do you see yourself as an Indigenous artist? And his response was something like, I'm whatever artist you need at this moment. So I thought that was really a great answer. And I don't see any more questions coming in, but I just want to say thank you so much for giving us the time today. This was a really interesting presentation. I'm so glad to know more about your practice, both creative and curatorial. Not that curatorial isn't creative, but in a different way. And that you're another artist that we really need today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm just going to write my website in the comments if anyone wants to go look further.
Fabulous.
Nick.com.
Make a note on the polished up video that is available. Thank you everyone for joining today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, Marla, behind the scenes, and Alberta, if you wouldn't mind staying on the line for just a few more minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Koinani.